Hi everybody, it's Claire back with another art journal video. So in this one I am going to be sharing with you how I connected a piece of one of Dina's new transparencies onto a journal page and used it as a bit of a fold out add-on. So this piece is from the Pattern Play pack of transparencies. I think it's one of my favourites, and guess what? I think it's probably because it's got circles on it. So I've just cut it down so it fits mostly with the size of the page in the small craft journal, and then I'm just going to cut out around some of the circles just so it gives that edge a little bit more interest rather than just a flat edge. And then on one of Dina's subscriber videos, she actually used some sellotape to stick the transparency in, and I really liked that because actually it was possible to put acrylic paint over the top of it and kind of disappear it. So it was like a bit of a game changer really. You don't need to use washi tape or anything like that. You can just use ordinary sellotape. So then I'm going in with magenta and just adding it down the bottom half of that right hand page using one of Dina's round brushes. And then this looks like peacock, going over, blending it a little bit. Looks like the magenta had mostly dried, so it didn't blend as well as I want. So then I'm just going in with a wet baby wipe and just lifting some of that excess paint off, which of course then dampens the page a little bit, and I can kind of smoosh it around with my finger as well. Then just going in with a bit more paint at the bottom, just so that it blends out to the bottom of my page. So this part of a stencil is from the most recent release from Dina. It's called the Inner Line stencil, and I've just cut mine into little strips. You don't have to do that, but I don't know. It's like a rush of blood to the head. I don't normally cut my stencils up, but I did with this one. And I quite like it actually because it's great for just adding little tiny bits of stenciling onto pages. It makes it a bit more manageable. This one I think is called the Floor Tile pattern, and here I'm going in with turquoise, although I haven't changed my blending sponge on the bottom of my tool, so the colours are just kind of really nicely working together. As you'll know if you've used these colours together, they do play very happily together. And then I decided that I was going to add some paint onto this transparency. So this is where the transparencies really are very, very versatile. You can add paint, or you can use them as like a see-through element that you can add onto your page so you can still see what's underneath. This time I quite liked the fact that it had paint on it as well. So I'm just using the same colours and using my blending tool with a clean sponge on each time, and I'm just adding some circles of colour onto those circle shapes on that transparency. So again, I've got the turquoise, the peacock magenta, and I think I also go in with a little bit of white as well. That might even be orchid. That looks like orchid too. So kind of sticking with colours in a similar palette as well. Colours that play nicely together. And I think these are some of my favourite combinations. I flip through my journals and find that I've used these colours quite often. So I've always really loved purples, so I think maybe I'm naturally drawn to that kind of colour palette with the blues as well. Okay, so I'm beginning to like how this is kind of layering up, and then I'm just going in with white as a little bit of a contrast with those other colours. Of course, white plays really happily with just about any colour, doesn't it really? So then I am using a face from one of Dina's sets of transparencies as well. I'm just cutting it to size because I want this to sit on that right hand page, and what I'm going to end up doing is pulling the hair out, that sounds awful, drawing the hairline out across the page to the left. So I'm just going in here and just adding the whites of the eye in, just to draw a little bit of focus to that eye, and kind of, I don't know, just brings the face alive. And then I'm just adding a few rough highlights onto the face too. Not worrying too much about putting any more detail on there because I kind of like how sketchy that is already. And then a little bit of white paint, just adding some splatters with my tiny brush. And then that will be given a good dry before I go any further, obviously. I do tend to edit out the drying parts because really, who wants to sit and watch paint drying. No, thank you. So then I am using Dina's ultra thick gel medium. That's where the G came from. Just to stick this transparency in place. It does dry clear, and yes, it does work really well for sticking transparencies down. The other way to do it is just to staple them in, but obviously sometimes even with Tim Holtz tiny attacher you can't quite reach across the page. So here you can see I'm just starting to pull that hairline out, and then I am using a Molotow marker. It's an acrylic paint pen in a turquoise, and I'm just adding a little bit of scribbly writing, a bit of semic writing onto the side of that face. And then going back over the white of the eye because it had kind of disappeared. Okay, and then I decided I was going to draw the hair out onto the other side of the page as well, onto the pull-out piece of transparency that I've added. It just kind of helps to pull those pages together, makes them work a bit more together. Then I'm going in with my large Posca pen and adding some dots onto the page too. So then I'm using the most recent release of collage paper as well. This, I think it's called Flying Things, this pack. I'm just cutting out some of these tiny little birds, and I'm just going to use some matte gel medium to stick those in place onto my page. And then it will be time to write my quote on. So these are just adding a little element, another element of more interest onto the page too. So kind of, and they're going to work with the quote that I'm going to write on there as well. It is very fiddly cutting them out because they're so small. So then just using some matte medium to stick those down. So once they were stuck in place, then I'm just going to start writing my quote. And you can see I'm just going to pull that quote right across the 2 pages. And then it starts to make them feel like they belong together. So, life without dreams is like a bird without, it might be, with no wings. Logical, really. The last bit, I think, is it can't fly. Stating the obvious, really, but yeah. So then I'm just doing that little trick that I do where it just kind of like pressing bold on your computer when you've done some writing, and it just darkens up part of it, kind of makes it stand out a bit better. And I only tend to add a darker bit to one side of the letter as well, so it doesn't take too long. It's quite a quick thing to do, but it does work quite well. Okay, so there we go, that's the finished page. So we've got the fold out transparency part, which then pulls the 2 pages together because the colours are carried across both pages. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me create this page. I hope it's given you some inspiration. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.